That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because the
Call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please stand and recite with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and if you'll please bow your heads with me, I'll give the invocation. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and meet here tonight on behalf of the town. And we'd like to ask for your blessing over this meeting. We'd also like to ask for your guidance and direction in the decisions we make tonight. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, item number 3. The approval of the April 24th, 2023 Planning Board minutes. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
I saw none.
Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
We have a motion from Mr. Lawrence.
I second.
Second from Mr. Hill, sorry.
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The approval of the minutes is carried. All right, on to the regular agenda item. Item number 1, TA 23-04, LDO Section 11.7 Main Street Corridor definition. Are you handling this one, Michael?
Yes, sir. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
It's all yours.
This is a text amendment brought forth by an applicant, so it's applicant-initiated text amendment to modify LDO Section 11.7, specifically the definition of the term Main Street Corridor. On screen here at the top is that existing current language. It reads, for the purposes of general commercial GC setback reductions, the Main Street Corridor includes South Main Street between Highway 401 and Young Street and is measured 300 feet in each direction from the Main Street center line. So the proposed language is there below you with the highlights and the strike through there to increase the 300-foot dimension to 500 foot and adding the words at any point in each direction at any point from the Main Street center line. So that is the breadth of the amendment here. As this section in the definition really all rolls back to LDO section 3.2.1C setback reduction. So this is a development option only for the general commercial or GC zoning district to provide or allow, I should say, setback reductions when the developer in the development does certain things here. And these are compulsory. If you do follow these standards here, the 1, 2, 3, and then the 4, 5, 6, that makes the subject project eligible to reduce their setbacks up to 65%. So it's not just a straight, if you're in GC and you're within 500 feet of the Main Street corridor, you get a 65% setback reduction. You also have to design your project to follow these standards on the screen here, and then you can reduce your setbacks by 65%. And this is what that 65% reduction would look like. So in the column here is the front minimum setback is 20, side 15, rear 35, and a corner lot would have a 25 corner side. So with 65% reductions, those could be shrunk down to what you see here, 7, 5 1/4, 12 1/4, and 8 3/4. But again, in order to exercise those setbacks, you've got to design and develop according to these standards here as they read. So it's all of 1, 2, and 3, and then at least 2 of 4, 5, or 6. And again, all of that is to be vetted at the time of site development plan for any project. The first step is for the project to be zoned general commercial, which dovetails into the next item on the agenda. So the staff recommendation is approval of this text amendment as the 300-foot expansion to 500-foot will allow some more properties along this Main Street corridor, which is again from Young Street on the northeast side all the way to the 401 bypass, to potentially take advantage of the setback reduction when they go under development. And what that does is it produces more pedestrian-friendly, urban, more buildings towards the front of the property rather than a large open parking lot separating the street from the building. So it's those types of design aspects that can be achieved with the setback reduction hand in hand. So you design a little bit more pedestrian friendly, a little more building towards the street frontage, and then you get to relax some of those setbacks. And again, with the text amendment, which is just the dimension from 300 to 500 and that one little couple of words there, more properties may be able to enjoy this standard that's already in the LDO in effect today. So staff is recommending approval here, and when we do have a motion here for you to either recommend approval or denial of this text amendment as written to the town board. The applicant is here, but I'm not sure if they have any more to add to the request. It's rather simple and straightforward request, and you have before you staff's analysis of it. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to try to answer them.
All right, thank you. Anyone have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Yeah, I do respective to any type of visual that you did to understand how many properties were going to be impacted by this change.
Do not have that analysis done.
So we don't know how many properties are impacted by this additional 200 feet on either side.
No. I do not know how many properties are also currently caught within the 300-foot. Properties today are not properties tomorrow, because land could go under subdivision and change property boundaries.
Well, true, but at the same token, it would be helpful to understand, you know, based on what our current map looks like and what the current zoning looks like, how many properties could possibly be affected by this change. And without that information, it's, I don't know, it just seems like a blind request.
Okay.
Does the tax maps show the current corridor as an overlay?
No.
It does not?
No.
Okay.
This Main Street corridor definition is not mapped
Okay.
and is not a zoning overlay either. It is simply, it is as written in the LDO. It is a defined area that allows a very specific regulation to be exercised. That's setback
This seems to encourage more commercial growth along the corridor. I'm assuming economic development is in favor of this change as well?
I believe they definitely would be, because it takes what are some suburban style setback dimensions, 20 foot in the front, 35 in the rear, 15 and 25 on the sides, and allows them to be shrunk and for the property to put more development closer to the fringes, which gets more development on the area, on the lot. So it could be more square footage. More square footage is more economic development. It also pushes parking further back and behind buildings. So again, not your prototypical large parking lot between the street frontage and a building like we see all over modern suburban the United States. So this is one of those, again, it's an elective. It's not a compulsory. Folks can still develop parking lot for 100 feet before you hit the building. If they want the relaxed setbacks and they're in the Main Street corridor as the definition allows it, they can then exercise that. They can bring their buildings closer to the front. They can provide some of those other amenities that are described in that section, and then they also get to relax their setbacks.
Could you pull those requirements back up again? Yeah. Thanks.
So C, setback reductions up to 65% shall be allowed within the Main Street corridor if all of the following are provided. Building and community gathering spaces that define no less than 2/3 of the street frontage. So if there was a lot with 100-foot frontage, 66 feet would have to be defined by buildings or community spaces, which is not parking lots. Then vehicular surface areas, i.e. parking areas, are limited to no more than 1/3 of the property frontage. So again, that 66-foot, the 33-foot, that's how those two go together, and you would bring that building and/or community spaces, which could be open spaces, more towards the front. So it would not go street, parking lot, building along 2/3 of the frontage of this example lot. And then it does require a minimum 10-foot wide sidewalk or multi-use trail along Main Street. Now, remember, this is 2021 LDO, and the 2022 Greenway and bike plans require now side paths and things like that along most thoroughfare or larger collector roadways. So that is really already covered by the Greenway plan, but it is driven down here as well. So you get a better sidewalk pedestrian trail along Main Street. And then you, again, get buildings or community spaces, not parking lots, at least 2/3 of the frontage of that property width.
Since you're extending that affected area from 300 feet to 500 feet, those folks along the side roads, don't have to do the Main Street sidewalk, right? So you could be on Jonesville or the other roads.
That is a detail to be determined. If the property is not eligible to meet these standards, the property's not eligible to meet these standards. Again, this is a regulation that will apply to
No, I
any
understand.
eligible property.
But again, I'm just thinking along those lines, the desire to extend it to 500 feet, put some of those side street areas in this, but they have to still meet the requirement of
That's correct.
the sidewalk, but they don't have property on the side, on Main Street,
That is potentially,
so they couldn't do it.
I would say that is to be determined as to how to apply this to a property that does not have Main Street frontage.
But the way it's written today, right, if you read that, it says you have to comply with these things, and they can't comply with that
Well, a
because.
property that's within 300 feet would still be in the same conundrum that you're describing. The text amendment
The high
simply
likelihood
was
is
to
that they would
extend
have
it to 500.
some frontage on that road, right? So my suggestion is to look at the LDO section there, and that if they don't have the ability to put it on Main Street, they make sure they have the sidewalk connector to Main Street.
Okay, so,
Then you say, Main Street, pedestrian,
Yeah.
and then I'm walking across grass to get to this other downtown, corridor area. At least you've got a sidewalk to get to that area where it doesn't have to be 10 feet, but it could be some size sidewalk to get there, if it already doesn't exist.
sure, okay, so number 3 would say, multi-use trails provided along Main Street or connecting to Main Street, something like that. Could be a very good addition. Thank you.
Can you pull up the GIS for me if you don't mind and just give us a look at, it doesn't have to be the whole quarter, but just to get an idea of how much more space we're talking about.
We'll go basically across the street here. Oops. So there's around 300 foot. That is, so this measurement is here, almost across the street. It's at the gas station with the McDonald's. Within it there, the McDonald's store, and measuring 300 foot. It almost reaches that storage use, self-storage use behind there. And then 500 would be about like that.
Can you go down to Jonesville Road, if you don't mind, too, and just taking a look at that intersection?
So there's about 300. And straight off. So there's about 500 foot to there. Then if you swung it to Jonesville,
You'd have to go directly perpendicular. Don't you have to go perpendicular from the center line to Main Street?
as the language was written, it's from any point.
Any point, okay.
So that could be as crow flies.
So that would be the farthest, oh no, because the corridor is defined to go all the way down, right?
All the way to
The corridors go all the way down to the beginning of the bypass, okay.
Right, the Main Street corridor is defined as Young Street, right
South-
here.
All of South Main.
all the way to here,
All
yeah,
of
so
South Main.
here, yeah, so, all of this would be that Main Street corridor. So again, you go 500 feet from the center line, both directions, all angles, et cetera. That would be the catchment area. And again, currently, the standard is 300 foot.
Does it, any part of the property have to be inside of that, or only the part?
Any part of it could.
So
The
just a
language does
corner
not.
touches it, you get the whole property?
That's right, that's right. So again, this, increasing the dimension would allow other properties to potentially be eligible for this, yes.
What are there other townships that have similar setback or similar numbers as far as that goes? 300, 500 in the area? Did we look at that?
I do not know if other towns have analogous Main Street corridors and a building setback standard. What most communities do, though, have is frontage requirements, meaning you're not permitted to do a sea of parking between the street and the building. You have to pull the building up. Most of their major corridors have frontage overlays. To your point about was it mapped? Sorry, Chairman. They have frontage requirements compulsory to bring that building, to bring the pedestrianism of the development, more towards the street. So that is what most communities have. The LDO does not have that, except for like this Main Street corridor definition as an option to bring this forth. I think one or two of the mixed-use districts, again, if someone were to zone to one of the mixed-use districts in the LDO, it does have building frontage requirements. I'm sorry, I apologize. But general commercial does not here. And again, other communities tackle this incentive to bring development more towards the street, more in a pedestrian, a little bit more urban setting, in different ways. The LDO currently has the Main Street corridor, again, focusing on the Main Street of Rollsville as the area where we want to bring that. And also, a lot of this build-to type development is historic. That's how buildings were built 100 years ago. You did not have a parking lot between the Main Street and a building. Parking was not the primary, driver of development like it has been for a long
100
time.
years ago, you just tie your horse up.
That's right. Didn't need 18 by 9 to do that.
Did Walbrook exercise this condition when they developed their site?
I'd say Walbrook has not gotten to the point of really exercising it or not exercising it. Their development is more at the subdivision level right now, as far as approvals go.
So they haven't
They're
got
laying
to-
out the land, they're laying out the streets, the utilities.
So they haven't got the actual site plan portion yet?
That's right. The Publix building has gone through site plan, but it is set behind a sea of parking, honestly, if you want to describe it. It is probably 200 feet back from the Main Street right-of-way at least. So, but there are some buildings that are much closer to it. So in some ways, yes, they are building more towards the intent of the setback reduction opportunity, but at the same time, they're,
Are there any out parcels in the Walbrook in front of Publix?
yes,
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
They
entire,
could be closer.
yes.
Yeah, that put them up on the
There are
road.
future lots yes, all along the Main Street of frontage.
So when they submit their site plan, they could exercise the option at that point in time?
Sure, and they are within the 300 feet, so they would not even be affected by this current text change. Yeah, that's right.
My other quite concern with the 500 feet is just looking at this particular one and then potentially future items, is you've got properties that are not and will never be connected to Main Street like that one is. So the intent is to build a community walkable downtown, but that's not, right? Because you're separating and pushing that further back, you potentially have properties that I'll take advantage of the 65%, but I'm not really connected to Main Street because I'm that far away.
That's right. Right. Again, the essence of the requirement is the buildings and the development's going to be closest to Main Street. That's where you want to pull it. What happens behind there, you could take like the Food Lion Shopping Center, Redford Center there, where there's lots of buildings and lots of developments, lots behind lots. Only some of them front Main Street, some of them don't. So some of them wouldn't today be eligible for this because they don't front on Main Street. They couldn't bring that building 65% or 2/3 or 66%, up to the frontage of the street with buildings or community spaces. So again, not every property along that it might meet the distance parameter has the physical parameters to exercise the setback reductions. Thus, they will have to abide by the 20-foot front, the 35 rear, the 15 sides when they go to develop. Sure. The applicant's here to come up.
Hi, Julie Spriggs. I just wanted to add something. In the LDO, under 6.4, in the parking section, the town has already recognized 500 feet as a walkable distance for parking. So you can have off-site parking as long as it's 500 feet within the main building. So that 500 feet has already kind of set a precedence as a walkable distance for the town. So that 500 feet still coordinates with this 500 feet for the text amendment as being still walkable to the Main Street corridor, because you already allow off-site parking to be within 500 feet of the principal building. It's asking for the off-site parking. So I don't know if that helps or not, but you already have a walkable distance in your LDO set at 500 feet. Now, with the other site arrangements down the corridor, I don't want to speak to that, but I can say for our site that you'll see in the next case coming up, we do have sidewalks already there connecting us to Main Street, and we are willing to do other things that we'll talk about in the next case. But to support this text amendment, you already have 500 feet distance and 6.4 as a walkable site distance for somebody to get from one place to the next within being a distance that is okay for the town as a walkable community. And so then we felt comfortable with that 500 feet distance as it's supported elsewhere in the LDO.
So if I can, you're, as being the applicant, you're the one asking for this text amendment essentially.
Yes.
Without it, does that mean your project doesn't move forward?
It does not mean our project does not move forward. It means there's some site constraints for us that will make it more difficult to put a type of building that we would like to put in Rolesville, such as parking behind the building, and bring those sidewalks up closer to the road, as there are some setbacks in place under the current LDO that, and a rezoning that was done prior to the new LDO and these owners taking ownership of the parcel, that really restrict what can be done on this parcel. This parcel is already zoned for O&P, O&I, OP, and it had some conditions tied to it, so that's one of the reasons why we're bringing the rezoning forward. But this would give us a little bit more leeway on what we can do with the building type and how we can make that site really be a site that we'd feel comfortable with presenting to Rolesville for something that would mimic that urban feel, that walkability, and bring that building closer to the front of the Jonesville and make that the walkable urban service feel that we would like to bring to the town of Rolesville that would mimic what you're trying to do along the Main Street corridor. So by doing this text amendment from 300 feet to 500 feet, and what I am to understand is the original 300 feet, there wasn't really an analysis done. A number was just picked to get it on the books and keep moving forward. Under the impression that if something needed to happen later on, a text amendment could be proposed to the boards to lengthen that distance if there was something that needed to be done. So the analysis you're asking for, I don't think was done for the 300 feet as well. I think it was just a number to get that definition put on the books so that we could then start building what the Main Street corridor wanted to, what the town wanted that corridor to look like. And with 500 feet being a walkable distance for off-site parking from the Main Street building, I feel comfortable proposing a 500-foot walking distance from the property to Main Street corridor.
I have less concern about the 500 feet walkable distance than actually connecting to Main Street in some manner. Because of the way you can even see some of the properties over there, I technically could touch it and there's no way you could walk it, right? Because there's no connection from Main Street to that property, with that triangle property right above the homes, right? Okay, I touched it, one little corner, 2 feet, I'm in. I can build the small piece, and I don't have any necessary requirements for that connection into Main Street.
Yes.
This is an LDO question, really, more than your.
Right. And it goes back to what Michael was saying with the definition of what is going on with the setback, actual requirements that would come at a site plan process. Right now, the text amendment just gives that option to people. It does not say you have to take that option. It does not say that that option is available to everyone, because you do have to have a GC zoning. So if you're not a GC zoning, if you're some other type of zoning, you will not be able to use that setback reduction. So there are still parameters in place to catch those properties that may meet the 500 distance, but will not meet the other distances. What those properties are, I can't say for certain. I can hand it back to staff, but that's why we felt comfortable with the 500 feet as the applicant. It is a walkable distance, and it does get you into that compatibility with other sections of the LDO where 500 feet is the walkable distance.
And that gives staff the ability to review each site plan as it comes through at that time, right?
Correct. Again, the
So that's
distance, the
just-
distance is eligibility part one, or
Right.
step one.
Right.
It makes a property eligible to then look at the rest of it as possible.
Sure.
So on the GIS right now, if you start your line from the very northwestern corner of their property, how far does it take to get to Main Street? Because what I'll tell you, I got a couple concerns. One, I think the definition of our Main Street corridor is too large. That's just me personally. I don't feel like having this kind of Main Street all the way from Young and Main all the way down to the bypass feels right to me right now. That's just how it doesn't feel right to me. I'm not saying I'm married to that, so I'd be open to any kind of conversation that could possibly convince me otherwise to my fellow board members, but I just feel it's a very stretched, that would look like a very stretched downtown, and it just feels very thin. And then when you throw in 500 feet on both sides, then I think you have this very fat, long corridor that just turns into a bunch of slop, because even right now, you've got the ABC store that doesn't meet this new condition, and then now you have a building that's going to be next to it that's going to meet the condition, but then it's not going to be in harmony with the rest of what's going on, and it's not even on Main Street. I don't know, it's just in my head, things don't fit enough, but I'm just curious how far away, if you draw from that corner, are they to any part of Main Street that meets the Main Street corridor, which would be basically to that house that was just built on the Scarborough land? How far away are they from Main Street, from that corner? We'll start,
This house here.
well, no, start from the corner of the lot in question.
I want to remind the board, this is not a text amendment about this.
I understand that, but it's it's the applicant that's asking for it, so it's definitely pertinent to the question.
Yes,
Right? So if you could draw it from the northeast corner of the property,
sure. And I'm going to caveat this by, this is me using IMAPs. This is not accurate or technical at all.
naturally, yes.
Okay, I'm going to do my best.
You said in any direction, so the shortest direction would be straight to the left, to where it says South Main Street.
Oh, I see, okay. And I'm going to guess.
You
this-
can even go a little bit farther south on the road, I think would be still shorter.
Guess center line is about there.
If you went like right about to this point, I think you're going to be
50, 440.
Looks like, if I'm on or about the center line, yeah, it's right around 400 foot right there.
I don't know. That's just how I feel, guys.
I'm kind of feeling like the commissioners have approved the corridor plan, so that's the corridor we're working with.
Yeah, well, I
Until it gets
understand that, but at the same token, that doesn't mean, yeah.
If the board wished to modify the Main Street corridor definition by redefining the Main Street corridor, that could be part of your recommendation. You could redefine the start and stop point, and then again, this is your recommendation. If you feel 500 is the right number, if you like 300, something in between, something greater, that could be part of your motion. This is what's being presented here tonight, though.
Yeah.
Just modifying the distance and that couple of keywords at any point in the measurement.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I would agree about, on this particular site, about the harmony of the ABC store versus the other and not looking the same. That's an interesting, having one right up there and then one away.
ABC was developed in 2009.
Right.
And this condition still would be optional for properties, is
The
correct?
development standard that gets enabled to properties now, we're talking about from 301 to 500 foot, is an option.
So someone could still develop an ABC store like it was developed,
Absolutely.
even though it was in that range.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
I gotta go back to I'm just looking at the GIS map, I'm throwing away this property here. But if you go up the street, there's properties that don't join Main Street that you could potentially be in that 500 range. So the question again is, if you can't meet every single one of those conditions, you can't do that. Okay, so if you can't put a sidewalk on Main Street, then you can't do the setback. That should be a yes or no, right? I'm not opposed to having certain things done to extend it, because it gives you that little offshoot off the Main Street, which is nice if you're going into a downtown corridor, but it's gotta have a connection. And some of these, there's no connection. Like, you'd have to walk up the street all the way around and then come back over to Main Street.
I think your earlier suggestion to modify 3.2.1 capital C3 was something like, or make a physical pedestrian connection to the Main Street corridor, could solve potential snags with that one right there.
I'm a little comfortable if we go down that route, because again, I don't mind so much having a side shopping center that's like that, right? But I just don't see, if you don't have that connection, that it's part of the corridor.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, staff has not exercised this or had to exercise this. No one's brought a site plan forward to review and approval exercising this. One thing that comes to mind with the language in 3 is that if a property were to do an off-site improvement that met that standard, that might be a way to work through it. So a non-contiguous property to Main Street could do an off-site improvement to the frontage along Main Street, especially if that trail is in the right-of-way and not on another person's property. That could be a way to fulfill this. So even though the property might not physically touch Main Street, have frontage on Main Street, it could be accessed via drive aisles that get you to Main Street. You know, everybody sees the property from Main Street, you just aren't touching it physically. So an off-site improvement to accomplish number 3 there could be one way. And again, I'm thinking outside the box here as maybe what staff will have to do in the future when we do actually have an application exercising this. But your condition would also give that allowance for providing a physical pedestrian access, meeting the 10-foot side path requirement to get to the Main Street corridor. So they would have to demonstrate how they're connecting to another off-site Main Street multi-use trail to get to the Main Street corridor as a means to facilitate that, yeah.
A quick question. Something just came to mind, Mike, when you said that. As far as recommendations go, I don't have problems with the 500, to be honest with you. I'm wondering if maybe we just change a little bit of wording instead of saying and is measured to 500 feet, maybe open to up to 500 feet. I don't know if that's something that is possible. That's what's going through my mind. As I said, I don't have a problem with the 500, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just a matter of, are we kind of wrapping our heads around, okay, 500 feet, clearly that picture with the ABC store, you can't go any further, you can't build there, can't do anything with it, it is what it is. So just kind of rewording things and saying up to 500 feet. Again, not sure where what kind of gray areas we're in there, if that's
Yeah,
something or what, but.
What we see on screen here, right, it doesn't have those words up to. I would say my staff interpretation would be, that's what this is saying.
This is what it's
Yeah,
saying.
It's saying up to, but not to exceed
Right.
500. So you could add those extra words if you wanted to, just to be, more comfortable with the language, but.
Yeah, it's
I would
just-
say My
right.
interpretation would be, this means up to and not to exceed 500 feet.
And that was more of a curiosity question. Okay, it's not saying, hey, let's, it's just very curious. Can we just say up to 500? So it's not so rigid at
Yeah.
to 500. That's all I have.
Okay.
Chair.
There's nothing else. The floor will be open for a motion. Well, we have, the applicant has one more thing he'd like to speak. Give him a moment.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Mac McIntyre. I'm the engineer for the project. One of the concerns we're working with staff was we're locked into a smaller parcel that has a 15-foot buffer on the internal side, a 30-foot buffer on the back side. And with this 30-foot buffer, trying to fit a building, and we're trying to push it to the front, put the parking in the back, we simply don't have enough room, and there's probably going to be other parcels that have that same problem. We literally have, our site's not more than about 150 feet wide, and we have less than 80 or 90 feet to work with. So trying to put the building in with the parking and the underground detention and the landscaping is going to be quite difficult for a lot of these parcels if you don't have some measure to get commercial in that way. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
All right.
McIntyre.
Floor is open now. If anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I'm not hearing any further questions or comments, so I would like to motion for approval, TA 23-04, LDO section 11.7, Main Street corridor definition. Sorry about that, I'm reading the wrong thing. Let's start that again.
That was it.
That was it? Okay.
Would you like to make the recommendations of the,
Also
Connection.
adding in the recommendation of, let me see,
connection to Main Street and up to 500 feet?
with the connection to Main Street and up to 500 feet, yes.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Sorry to interrupt. Point of clarification. I believe the discussion about the connection to Main Street, that was made in a different section of the LDO,
Okay.
Oh,
not 11.7 in the definition of Main Street corridor. Attorney,
All right.
can do.
can they augment their motion with plus a text amendment to section, and I'll get that
I think,
on screen?
yeah, I think making a suggestion that
Okay.
would also encompass it. What you would see working well would be this and adjust the other as well.
Right.
With a change to also LDO section 3.21C.
3. I believe it's
Okay.
number
Are you
3.
comfortable with that amendment? Motion amendment?
I am
adjustment?
comfortable, with that amendment adjustment.
Do we need to
What?
repeat that whole thing, or can we get,
Do we have it? Do we have it? We can, okay, I mean, if you feel comfortable, or let's go ahead and repeat it. We'll just repeat it. let's all be clear and on the
All
same
right.
page.
try again?
Make him do it again.
Absolutely. Let's see if I can get this right. I motion to approve TA 23-4, LDO section 11.7, Main Street corridor definition.
That was, I think, 3.6. Sir?
LDO section 3.21C.
3.
Dot 3.
.3, for a minimum 10-foot wide sidewalks or multi-use trail is provided along Main Street.
With the
Access
connection.
Main Street, right?
Access Main.
That's what I would feel more,
Access Main
that's
Street.
what I would feel more comfortable with too, is that's the
Access Main
important
Street.
part.
With wording of up to 500.
The up to
No.
500 would be back in the 11.7.
Gotcha.
in the
Sorry about
definition. Okay.
Let's keep it simple.
Think-
That's the motion.
All right, I think we have it now. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Lawrence, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right. We will, before we head on to item number 2, the rezoning request, I will ask to recuse myself on that one as I have the surveyor on that project, and I will hand it off to
I'll take it over.
Mr. Cross.
Thank
for
you,
this
Mr.
one.
Chairman.
I will step aside.
All right, continuing with our regular agenda. Item number 2, we have REZ 23-4 at 4502 Vine Yard Pine Land Rezoning Map Amendment. Mike, since you have the floor.
Yes.
Would you lead us in a presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, sir. This is a rezoning request for the property at 4502 Vineyard Pine Lane to change the zoning from the existing office and professional conditional zoning to a general commercial conditional zoning district. And this will be subject to the land development ordinance adopted in 2021. Quick vicinity map here. This is a large view. Our site is right here. It has frontage on Jonesville Road and Vineyard Pine Lane, the Carlton Point subdivision here, South Main Street again here, Rollsville Elementary due north of the site. Looking a little closer here, at the development, again, Jonesville Road on the left or west of the site here, the ABC store. This disturbed land is undergoing development as a townhome community as we speak. There are several buildings in the air. And then this lot here is the subject property. It is lot 6 of the original subdivision. Quickly, the future land use map does show this lot, this entire older subdivision here, as commercial future land use. This details the existing zoning, so there is some history to this. Currently, with the translation to the land development ordinance from the Unified Development Ordinance, it is office and professional as a conditional zoning, so OP-CZ. When the translation in 2021 occurred, the older zoning district was Office and Professional Special Use District, or SUD, which dated back to a map amendment 2007-06, which had associated special use permit provisions, AKA conditions. What we call today conditions of approval, they were noted as provisions. So the zoning history goes back to 2007 that governs this particular lot. On the right side of the screen is taken from your staff memo. This is those 6 conditions from that SUP dating to the 2007 rezoning for the property that ran with the whole property, which was all of the lots there around Vineyard Pine Lane, that cul-de-sac there where the development's occurring that we've just shown there, the ABC and the townhomes. It was originally, I believe it was less than 6 lots before that time. Then it was subdivided into 6. They're all about 1.5 acres lots that fronted on that cul-de-sac. So staff's analysis is that original conditions 1, 2, 4, and 6 have been completed. So they were completed in the past by the developer of the subdivision at some points in the past. Number 5 deals with adding retaining existing vegetations and/or landscape buffering on the eastern and southern property lines of this. And both of those eastern and southern property lines butt up against the Carlton Point single-family residential neighborhood. So that was the impetus for that, to buffer whatever development was going to go in this small subdivision against that known residential subdivision. And then number 3 is the real crux of the rezoning intent tonight. So staff's analysis of number 5 is that the current LDO buffer requirement will be equal or better than this standard. And it's also noted that this lot does not abut single-family homes. Actually, it abuts an HOA-maintained open space lot, which is fully forested as we speak. So I don't believe, or staff's interpretation is that the intent of this was for the eastern and southern property lines, but this particular lot really doesn't butt up against any of those residential homes. It abuts an open space lot because it is the closest to Jonesville Road. Number 3, several points with this. So the first line of this is Vineyard Pine Lane. All site plans and uses of the 6 lots are proposed will come before the Town Board of Commissioners for review. Now, that was the process in 2007 under the Unified Development. The process would have been quasi-judicial. The Town Board no longer conducts quasi-judicial hearings. The LDO was amended, and that ceased that process. The permitted uses listed for this, again, it was an office and professional zoning district, were limited to these uses: banks, barbers, beauty shops, funeral homes, medical clinics, dentist office, professional and admin offices, and libraries. In 2008, an amendment was made to this to also allow a Wake County ABC store, because a Wake County ABC store was looking to buy the lot that we all know that has been developed as such. So those were the governing uses. In 2019, lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 were rezoned to the R and PUD residential zoning district under the UDO, and that's what has allowed the townhome development to occur. So the ABC store got an amendment to specifically permit it in 2008, and then the other 4 of the 6 lots were rezoned to allow a townhome. So this subdivision is no longer even capable of meeting the intent of an office and professional park and fulfilling and building out with these types of uses. So the intent is gone from the original zoning, and there's 1 lot left, close to 20 years later, that is undeveloped. And these uses are no longer so applicable, because again, the intent was this was going to be an office park of sorts unto itself, but that has not come to fruition. So the general commercial district is the base district that's being asked here. It allows a wide range of uses, and the applicant has provided a condition to exclude 19 of those uses. And here's this table. I believe the board has seen this before. It's been used in a couple of similar rezoning requests where their main condition is to strike out a whole list of uses that they have no intention of developing, and then paring down from the 37 permitted uses down to a more manageable list. So this table here details the 29 uses that could be exercised on this property in the future when developed. One has remained as a special use permit. It is called social services. And then 18 would be prohibited, and they are listed here. So they're categorized by commercial, office, medical type, civic uses, infrastructure, industrial, et cetera. So this is what the applicant's bringing forth as their condition to promise what developments or uses would be permitted in the future. The large staff analysis looks at the comprehensive plan first, the Main Street Vision Plan also, because this is close to the Main Street corridor, as our last item talked about, could be within that physical parameter of being considered the Main Street corridor, and traffic impacts in the transportation plan. So staff does find that commercial development and redevelopment along Main Street and thoroughfares in general are supported by the comprehensive plan and the Main Street Vision. As far as transportation goes, Jonesville Road is a thoroughfare road with a 90-foot right-of-way. It will be expanded at some point in the future. The developer of the subdivision, again, in the early 2000s, did their part to meet their conditions to widen that road, donate money towards signals, et cetera. So the subdivider that created this lot more than 15 years ago has paid into road improvements in the past. But traffic impact analysis for the ultimate development of this lot will occur at the time of site development plan when the known amount of square footage or uses is there. Right now, there are no uses, there are no buildings, et cetera. There's no concept plan with this rezoning, as you have observed in your packet. So that traffic impact analysis question will come up at the site development plan step. Overall, analysis and staff recommendation is that the existing office and professional zoning with those use restrictions that we looked at, those basically 6 permitted uses, they don't equal the current environment for non-residential development, and does not meet the intent of what that subdivision was originally laid out for. General commercial is the predominant and appropriate zoning district along Main Street and other thoroughfares connecting to and accessing from Main Street. The general commercial district aligns with Main Street Vision Plan tenets and many of those of the comprehensive plan. And the conditioned use and tenant variety shown in that table there, limiting them to those, I guess, 29 permitted uses, would be those that are best suited to serve the burgeoning, residential development around there. And again, this property is viewed as an extension of Main Street, and the development that will be occurring there, specifically nearby, would be the Walbrook development, which will be just a few hundred feet away from this property. So with all of those reasons and analysis and findings, staff does recommend approval of rezoning 23-04 and offers up a motion for the board to either recommend approval or denial to this. Of course, suggestions on the condition of the uses that the applicant has brought forth is also at your purview. The applicant is here, and if they'd like to make a presentation or just answer questions, they're happy to do that.
Okay.
The height restriction is 3 stories for commercial? Is
General
that correct?
commercial, the building height is 35 foot.
Are we opening up the floor for discussion, comments, motion, questions?
Did the applicant want to speak?
Did the applicant also want to speak?
Hello, Julie Spriggs, again. As Mike went over, the current parcel, that's the last standing parcel of the office park that was supposed to be, that is not going to be. The restrictions are so tight on this site that trying to develop it with anything other than a general commercial is going to be difficult because you're only allowed the 6-7 uses. A bank, a funeral home, a office and professional type building, all those with the setbacks that are currently on the property of the 30-foot buffer along the bottom of the property and the 30-foot along the side, plus the streetscape buffers and the landscape buffers on the other side where the townhomes are now from that rezoning request that was granted several years ago. That site is very constrained to what you can do. One of the reasons why we brought the text amendment forward is to help reduce that streetscape buffer so we can bring the building forward and have more parking in the back. When we're looking at Vineyard Pine as being the front of the parcel, and so we are looking at having active open recreational space around the front and down the side so that we could offer eateries and shopping with the kind of urban feel that you're used to seeing in other towns, Wake Forest, Raleigh, some of these areas that you just have that walkability and you have that invite to come sit down, have your coffee outside, have a sandwich outside, and have the shopping, but have that parking in the back. The site, the way it is now, a funeral home is not going to come to the site. A bank is not going to come to the site. With those site constraints, it's not enough parcel left to build upon. So that's the reason for the rezoning. And with part of that rezoning and our vision for the property, with it being general commercial, is more of that shopping center feel for the parcel at large, having several different businesses in an L-shaped building, kind of with the open space on the sides and the front, and then the parking in the back, which would be more or less facing the townhome side and not the Jonesville Road side. We have not fleshed those ideas out yet because we weren't sure what would happen with the text amendment and we weren't sure what would happen with this general request tonight. So the zoning conditions that we have proposed limit the businesses that we feel would not be a good use in that area. So as you see, there's one special use permitted by special use, which is social services, and then there are 18 prohibited uses, which just don't make sense for this site because the site is so small. Car wash, the funeral home that was originally allowed, any gas stations, any type of lodging. We did go ahead and strike out the vape and tobacco store because there was a text amendment recently for the vape and tobacco stores to be removed from areas within 1,000 feet of the school. There is a school within 1,000 feet of this property, so we went ahead and moved this into the prohibited section. Some of those other sites, like a water storage tower, fulfillment center, those things are just too big, require too much land. This parcel is not that big, so we're looking for something along the more neighborhood commercial type shops that you would see.
Why did you take out the tattoo establishment?
Tattoo establishment, we took out because it seems to be a little bit more controversial and figured that we could just go ahead, and that's not the type of business that we normally lease to in our developments, and so that is, we decided we could go ahead and strike that out as well. We're looking at more things that will bring walkable traffic in, traffic that will come up Jonesville from the new corridor section that's coming through with the Fowler Road extension, something that you could go get your coffee, get your donut, get a sandwich, and support the houses that are coming with Walbrook and Carlton Point, and also be compatible with some of the other uses coming, such as the out parcels for the Publix and for the ABC store across the street. So we're looking to keep that in harmony with the area. And so we...
An alcohol establishment across the street, but you don't want a tattoo establishment.
It's an alcohol, it's the ABC store, which is not the same thing as like an alcohol. It's not a brewery, it's not a distillery, it's not a nightclub, bar, tavern type situation. If you'd like to remove that from the list, we'd be more than happy to move that up. But part of our thinking was we wanted something with the walkability and the more family entertainment type thing, where you go and you can sit down for dinner, or you go, like I said, have your sandwich, have your donut, pop into a boutique, get your nails done, get your hair done, that kind of thing. Some of the other uses that we had on there, like all these uses are allowed by right as currently in the general district. And so what we did was just move them around a little bit to focus more on the type of establishment we want for our site. Some of the other things that are current on the site with the buffers, with the landscaping buffer, there's a 30-foot buffer along the end that was tied to the plat. We are proposing to keep that. That is not part of the rezoning request. With the LDO, it would lessen some of the requirements on the eastern side of the property, but it would require more plantings and more landscaping. So rather than just a 30-foot buffer, it does require more landscaping, a fence, that type of thing, so that you still have that protection and that visibility, that you wouldn't just be in your townhome looking straight across at a row of cars. There is that wooded area, and then there would be a protection for that. So now, third-story townhomes that look down, we don't have trees and fences tall enough to get that view, but anything on the ground would not be visible. And some of the other conditions that we were looking at on the site, of course, if we had the room to move the building along not as that 30-foot setback that we would have with a thoroughfare buffer, if we could reduce that setback a little bit, then we could then do more outdoor seating and more of the active use areas that you're used to in a little shopping center of that nature. And so that gives us more site to work with without having to really finagle so much out of the square footage of a leased building, to make sure that we can get viable businesses in that are going to do well for the town. And so that was our justification for asking for the rezoning. The current restrictions on this site, because it is the last one standing of a special use permit from 2007. The rules and regulations have changed. The UDO has been rewritten into the LDO. There's been a lot of changes, and all the other 5 parcels have already been rezoned or had an amendment to make those parcels viable. So we're asking for the same consideration. Do you have any questions
Thank
for
you.
me?
I'll open up the floor for, again, discussions. Any comments, any questions? Motion?
I appreciate Michelle's input on the tattoo establishment. I personally don't see why it should be excluded, simply because it's possible to go there, and I think that's something that we can address later and present the property as a little bit more inclusive than restrictive. I understand all the other omissions that you have, other prohibited uses make sense based on what you're
We can happily amend
explaining.
this
So
table as part of the recommendation. We'll amend the table and move the tattoo uses back up if that's something you want to see.
I'm comfortable with that. Obviously, it's something that we'll vote on, but I'm personally comfortable with that.
As the applicant, we're comfortable with adding that to the permitted uses so we would have instead of 29 permitted uses, we'd have 30 permitted uses, and then 17 prohibited uses and 1 special use permit.
And for clarification, the L shape that you're I know you don't have any plans, and I know that can change at any moment, but obviously you've had some sort of vision coming into this in some respects. So you're talking an L-shaped 1-story building?
Yes.
And it sounded like you were going to face it on the vineyard side, so it's facing,
Yeah, there'll be a dual frontage in the L shape. So the smaller L will be on Vineyard Pine, because we're going to line up the driveways with we're not going to get a driveway on Jonesville, so the only
Right.
access into the site is directly across from the ABC store. So we want to line the driveways up so that shorter L is going to be at the top of Vineyard Pine, and then go lengthwise. The longer portion of the L will be down Jonesville till you get to that 30-foot buffer at the bottom. And we will not be asking for any entrance, right in, right out, or anything off of Jonesville. We'll only have the access to the site off of Vineyard Pine. That would match the ABC store, because ABC store does not also have access from Jonesville Road. They only have access off of Vineyard Pine.
and when you say access, you mean vehicle access, not
Yes.
pedestrian access. So will there be
Yes.
pedestrian access to the
Pedestrian access will be
building from
along-
the
yes.
sidewalk that currently exists
Right.
on?
We're looking at the active use areas being in front of both sides of those buildings, along both frontages, so that you would be able to have tables and outdoor seating and, you know, a little bit of recreation and arts along the way, so that you would have that urban walkable feel type
From the road frontage.
from the
yeah.
road frontage, yes.
I just want to clarify something. So we are rezoning something that had conditions previously. So those conditions go away, and the only condition currently being proposed is this table, this use table. So that's the only condition right now, if this were to move forward. So I just want to clarify that we understand
And I
that.
think in the presentation, I think it was clear that all the new ordinances that have passed since then cover all the conditions that were in place on the previous property. Correct?
Sure. I think it's 1, 2, 4, and 6 were basically like development related.
Right.
And staff's understanding is that all of those have been accomplished. 5 dealt with perimeter buffering.
Right.
And again, staff's assessment is that the LDO equals or betters that requirement. So that's a wash or even an improvement.
Right.
And then 3 is all that useless. So that's, again, the crux of this rezoning, to get out from you know, being regulated by that use list.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
I can tell you it's gonna come up in discussion, your bars and nightclubs over there as well.
It is in the permitted uses section, but we are currently not really looking at those types of uses for that. But we wanted to have an option just in case we are approached by somebody for something along those lines. Again, if we're, since we're amending the tattoo establishment, again, we weren't planning on having something like that in the section, but it's nice to have that as a permitted use in case we are approached, or we would like to have that business as a viable option to lease to in the future.
Just a curiosity question, does like a bottle shop count as a bar or commercial? Because they don't have a full liquor license, you can serve beer and wine.
That's a good question. I think the details of their ABC permit would help staff figure out if it fits the definition of a bar, tavern, nightclub, or not, or if it's simply a retail establishment that sells. I believe those are usually based on some percentages of land area, things of that nature. Sorry, land area, square footage of the building.
The BBC license, you can have beer and wine, and you can serve beer and wine, but if you serve full liquor, then you have to have food, unless you're a club, which you have to pay for.
There's lots of nuances to it, and
I just don't know if I'll fall in a bar, because on a
That's
small little wine shop, great, right? And there may be not full nightclub
that's right,
disco music,
Correct.
but are they
That's
considered the same? Or are you
right.
limiting yourself to one or the other?
Well, I know that we've had a lot of questions come up about bars.
I think it also depends on whether you're having on-site or off-site consumption.
Most of the bottle shops nowadays have an on-site consumption because they can get a liquor permit for beer and wine only.
Right. And then sometimes
also
they'll bring
sell
in food
commercially.
trucks to sell the food on premises. But most of the time, from the permits, it does also come down to whether you're having off-site or on-site consumption.
No on-site would be, from a zoning perspective, retail.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
What's the point?
You're selling a product that walks out the door. But any consumption on site then could trend into, does it meet the definition of bar, tavern, nightclub?
What's Greenway?
And I would have to look up their permit. I do not know off the top of my head.
Greenway's the bottle shop, it's a retail establishment, but they serve liquor, they don't necessarily serve liquor, they're beer and.
Beer and wine.
Well, they have taps as well, so they're not just bottles.
No, I said, but
But,
they're
yeah,
generally called
yeah.
a bottle shop.
Yeah,
But they
you
serve.
you can do takeout and you can consume there.
Like,
And they have the food trucks, right? They do not have a kitchen there, to my knowledge, so.
So a lot of, we've just had a lot of complaints and concerns with the noise from the bars. And this is right inside of a residential neighborhood. The perimeter of that is a residential neighborhood. So that's gonna be a discussion, I'm just saying, when it comes to the town board.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of REZ-23-04 with the amendment of moving tattoo establishments from prohibited to permitted at 4502 Vineyard Pine Lane. Send it to the Town Board of Commissioners.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Motion is carried.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kraus. All righty. All right, on to item C, communications, the planning director's report.
Yes, I will stand in for Meredith and give the planning director report. Since your last meeting at the end of April, the Town Board of Commissioners on May 2nd held a public hearing and started the deliberation discussion on Pierce Farm, which is map amendment 21-10. Again, the public hearing was opened, presentations and discussion were held, and the action at that point was to continue and keep open the public hearing and the discussion and deliberation to the June 6th Town Board meeting. So that one has been pushed forward to June 6th. I put here in the link just to that project webpage where you can follow the progress. You can see status updates. When new materials come in, they'll be posted there, et cetera. And I will tell you, there are some revisions to the conditions from where you saw them from the outcome of the Town Board discussion. So that is coming forward soon. The development, so if it's okay, I'll move through the director's portions here.
Yep,
The December.
please do.
That shouldn't say December, that should say April. The April 2023 development report is in your packet. Highlights here are there were 11 new single-family or townhome permits, almost 50 total residential type permits were processed, and just some updates. The Cobblestone Apartments are under construction. I think the third building has or will very soon be starting to go vertical. Two are underway, as you can see if you go down Main Street there. The Carolina Legacy Volleyball Complex is getting very, very, very close to final certificate of occupancy. You can see the volleyball nets and all that. They're working on their grading and their landscaping on the front end so that when you see that from Young Street, you can really see that coming together. The building is a very large building, and again, it's getting finished out on the inside and the outside. And finally, in the Walbrook development, there is a lot that's already been plucked for a 7-Eleven store. And a site development plan has been submitted, and it's currently under review as we speak here in May for that. So if you wish to go to the Walbrook website, project webpage, and you'll find that site development plan. I believe it's 23-04, if I remember correctly. You can look at those cursory first submittal plans for that. So this will be across the street from the Publix building at a brand new intersection where Virginia Water Drive will come in through the Walbrook development, hit Main Street, cross over, and then it will be extended to a cul-de-sac on the other side, and this is that corner lot, so across Main Street. So land that doesn't look like much right now, but eventually it will be a 7-Eleven should these plans get approved.
I just want to clarify something.
Yes.
Make sure I heard correctly. Publix is not coming next year, it's the year after?
I do not know the latest on their timeline. That has not been disclosed to staff recently. I would say it's May, and it's still a forest. I would say it's not coming this November. So it's probably next November. And I always heard it was a November opening.
I thought it was 24 last I heard.
That's my memory as well. And again, because we're here, it's not 23 clearly, so it's, I would say it's 24. Yeah. Yeah. That concludes the planning director's report.
All right, thank you.
There was one note on a permit in the ETJ. What was that for? Do you know?
You mean a development plan that's
I
coming?
I think it was noted in the report as a permit.
Oh, sorry. I do not have the development report. If you'd like to find it, maybe jog our memories.
It was in the grid, you know how you break down, you break down the residential and the
Yeah, there
commercial,
was
and
one
you break down
ETJ,
the
that's
issued
right.
and all that, and one of them, there was one ETJ.
I did catch
EJ
that. I do not
non-sub.
know where.
Yeah, that one right there, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Oh, it's year-to-date? Okay, thank you.
If you're curious where it is, that's something that, development.
Yeah, I am. I'll email. Thank you.
Yeah, Jordan, in our office, yeah.
All right.
Town
Thank you.
attorney's report.
Town attorney's report.
Nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Is there any other business tonight? All right, hearing none, we will open the floor for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion for adjournment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Yes.